So we're here at the National Home Performance Conference in Seattle, Washington. And with us we have some calibration gear. So Ben, what is it that we're offering here at the booth this year?
Oh, sure, yeah. So we have a special accreditation as part of our ISO 17025 that allows us to do field calibrations of gauges at least. And so we hope to bring this technology to some of the shows and be able to calibrate customers' gauges here at the shows.
Fortunately, gauges are pretty easy to travel with. They can fit in a suitcase and everything, so yeah, that's a pretty nice thing to offer.
Yeah,
so.
Definitely. And the nice thing is that we have our furnace controls, our master reference device here that we use. That's connected to the gauge, and that does a pressure comparison between the two devices, and then everything's computerized, so it goes through all the calibration points necessary to fully calibrate a DM32X or a DM32 or your DM2, and capture the calibration points by serial number, and then now you can go afterwards onto the website and get your updated calibration certificate to show in the field and everything.
Cool. So what kind of accreditation do we have to have as a lab to make all this happen?
Sure, there's just a process that makes sure that all of our documentation, everything for the lab, and all the procedures are updated and everything, that our master reference devices have updated NIST traceable certificates and everything showing that the accuracy of the devices and everything, and that's I think that's about it really.
Yeah. So as we have our manometer hooked up to this device, what's actually taking place? Like what is this device actually doing to our gauge, and if something's out of whack, like how do we adjust it back into place?
Oh, sure. So there is a linear actuator inside this that generates pressure on its own, so it can generate between 0.1 pascals all the way up to 10 inches of water, 2,495 pascals, and then it will just compare the pressure reading that it has from its own internal pressure sensor, which is a high resolution pressure sensor, and compares it to the pressure readings that you get on the gauge.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's great that this is actually something we can travel with now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a
new
great
thing that we
service
can
to
offer.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So back at the lab, we have several of these? How many can we hook up to one device?
Sure, at the lab we typically would do maybe 5 gauges at a time for each of the furnaces and everything, and so it takes a little bit. It takes 45 minutes to do 5 gauges or 20 minutes to do a single gauge on one furnace, and we have 2 furnaces for redundancy, and then we also have another furnace that we use for our 30-inch pressure sensors as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
So our DM32 manometers and our new DM32X manometers, what we're recommending is 5 years for our calibration interval.
Yeah.
And if you're still using our older DM2s, it's still 2 years, but we're still calibrating those, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's also important just to make sure that you're meeting the requirement of the standard that you're testing to,
Sure.
because they may have different interval requirements based on different standards around the world and stuff.
So 5 years is our recommendation. Some standards say do whatever the manufacturer says, but some standards might say we don't care what the manufacturer says, but we still want it done every year. So it's important to pay attention to that.
And usually it would, the sensors would have to see either kind of like electrical abuse, or like sometimes people try to clean that tubes out with like a high pressure PSI line or something like that, so that would burst the diaphragm.
Don't do that.
And you see that right away because the pressures readings on here will be vastly different than what you see on your reference device. So
sure.
Yeah.
Well, as we travel to some of these big national conferences every year, maybe this is something we'll be able to offer. So if you're not already following us on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, if we're going to bring this to a conference to the booth, we'll make an announcement. So please keep track of that, so that way you can bring your gauges and take advantage of this.
And make sure you bring your gauges in your carry-on, not your checked-in bags.
Oh yeah, don't check your gauges on the plane. Carry them on.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Yeah. Otherwise, if you send a gauge in to Retrotec, what's the turnaround time usually look like?
I think it's just 2 or 3 business days.
Yeah,
really. Yeah,
it's not too bad.
It's a quick process.
Plus whatever the shipping is, depending on where you are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So quick turnaround. Yeah.
Well, Ben, this is a great idea.
Yeah, awesome.
And of course we have Alex behind the camera there, who's actually operating this thing for us here, who's certified to do so. So Alex, thanks for being here too. And so that's a brief rundown on our calibration process, and now our new mobile field calibration process. So hopefully if you guys ever see us out in one of these events, you'll see this in person. But that kind of wraps that up, and we'll catch you again next week as we cover a new topic.